His levels were quite high.
My child can't have diabetes. It did not compute.
I really didn't know how to deal with it.
I was confused, sad, and scared.
And so we talked to Zachary, and I was impressed with his determination. For a little child to say, I am going to be well, I am not staying like this.
My idea was to seek out the natural health care practitioners, which would continue walking Zachary on his path of wellness.
Welcome to The Incurables. I'm Don Wildman. Zachary Swerdlow and his family had always made health a priority. His parents were careful to make sure that Zachary and his brother ate the right foods and got plenty of exercise. The boys were rarely ill. So when Zachary started losing weight, his parents became concerned. When his behavior became erratic, concern turned to alarm. And when he began to vomit repeatedly for no apparent reason, panic set in. At first, his parents were reassured by doctors that Zachary was simply struggling under the weight of childhood stress. But they were soon crushed to learn that his very life was in danger.
Zachary's always been a really good-natured, easy-to-deal-with child.
He was a very robust child, intelligent. He spoke and walked at an early age. Over the years, as I learned more and more about holistic medicine, we decided not to give him candy or sugar, white sugar, tried to reduce the white flour, tried to keep everything as organic as possible.
I always took my children once a year for a health checkup around their birthday. I just thought that was a prudent thing to do. But in addition, I also saw the natural health care practitioners more for well children checkups rather than because they were sick, because my children were never sick. It was never an issue. They were never on antibiotics. They never took a pill. I only expected wonderful things for him. He was already, in my mind, healthy. I expected him to get healthier.
In the fall, Zachary made the transition from elementary school to middle school. It was a big deal for him to be on campus with older kids and with higher expectations.
Before he actually went to school, about a week before, in 1 week, he vomited about 3 different times. And so I checked him. He didn't have any fever. Then I noticed that I thought he was looking thin. So I thought, okay, he's going through puberty. I noticed his breathing was starting to get labored. And then he got, to me, argumentative. And he's never been argumentative before, but again, I'm thinking, okay, new school, he's tired, it's puberty, am I an overprotective, worried mother? All these things mixed together, it's going on in my head.
I had to go to San Francisco area to do some work for a while. And when I came back, I definitely saw a tremendous deterioration in Zachary in that time that I was gone. So I said, Janet, you know, I hate to say this, but I think that we need to just take him to a doctor just to see what's going on.
For me to take him into the traditional medical system is a big deal, because I've always found my answers in the alternative community.
But when someone is so close to you like that, you just want to cover all of the bases and make sure that everything is covered.
Janet felt that perhaps she was overreacting, but they decided to take Zachary to see the pediatrician.
They checked almost everything possible, but eventually they decided it was just stress from school. But before I left, they wanted to check one more thing.
I was relieved because I thought, okay, I'm just worrying. It's too much stress. I'm just worrying.
Then they came back saying that I had type 1 diabetes because there was sugar in my urine.
I just looked at him. I couldn't even hear what he said. I said, you mean he doesn't have diabetes? And he goes, no, he has diabetes. Then he went on. He said, I called the hospital. They're sending an ambulance down to get him. I can't even explain the feeling. A second ago he said it's just stress, and now he's telling me I've got to take him straight to the hospital to get stabilized, and they're sending an ambulance for him. It's like, it was too much.
I was confused, sad, and scared. I really didn't know what to think.
So he had some tears, and I had my tears, and I said, well, I got to call Daddy and let him know.
When I saw her cell phone on the ID, I knew she would only call me if something wasn't good. She told me the story about the ketones in his urine and the acid buildup and they said he has diabetes, and that I should meet her immediately in the emergency room at the local hospital.
Diabetes is a disease in which the body does not manage insulin properly. Insulin helps the cells break down food, especially sugars and starches, into energy. Zachary's diabetes led to a condition called ketoacidosis, which indicated that his body was burning fat for energy. This condition can lead to coma and even death.
We weren't in the waiting room more than 5 minutes, and they came out with a wheelchair. And it's a scary feeling to watch your son be put in a wheelchair and wheeled through the doors as they open, and you're following behind.
So they stuck an IV in my arm, which really hurt. And then they gave me pure oxygen to breathe.
I just burst into the emergency waiting room, and it was filled with people. I had packed haphazardly bags, which I knew we'd have to take to the hospital. And I found Janet in the hallway and Zachary in this room, hooked up all these monitors, and he looked white and gray, really emaciated, and he could hardly speak. It was like an effort for him to even talk to me. I said to him, "You'll be okay." And he said, "Don't worry, Daddy, I'm not going to die."
In just a few weeks, Zachary Swerdlow had gone from a vibrant middle schooler to a struggling hospital patient, and his bloodstream was under attack.
This was a life and death situation for my child. His sugar was off the chart, his ketones were off the chart. He could go into a coma at any moment.
I really didn't know how to deal with it. You know, I'm okay dealing with other people who are not so close to me, but when it's your own child, there's something about it that really rips your heart out.
It didn't make sense. Here I had a perfectly healthy child who had always been raised well, I fed him well, I exercised him, I did everything. It's like, my child can't have diabetes. I mean, it did not compute.
There was this IV sticking into my arm, and I couldn't really think clearly because it hurt a lot.
They called us in, and they had him all in the bed with the nurses and putting more IVs in him, and the attendant doctor came over to us, and he was drinking a Coke, and he was quite a bit overweight. And he says to me, "Well, this is just bad luck."
I just did not accept it. There was something in me. All my work is about alternatives and opening the mind and using natural methods of healing and correcting the body and the mind. So I couldn't accept it. I wouldn't.
And at 7:30 in the morning, the pediatrics endocrinologist came. So she looked at us and she said, "You know," she said, "his pancreas is 98% dead."
And so I said to them, "Did you test that to see if that was true?" And they said, "No, there's no way, no reason to test it and no way to really test it. Only from his symptoms, they know that this is true."
The hospital would not release Zachary until they were certain that his blood sugar and ketone levels had stabilized. Despite their misgivings, the Swerdlows were determined to do everything they could to help their son. This included a traditional and intensive diabetes training program.
You know, this is what you're going to poke his finger with. This is how you load the needle. This is how you put the needle in. This is how you give a shot. Different kinds of insulin he's going to be taking, long-term for night, with just 24 hours, different insulin for the daytime.
The hard part, maybe worse than the syringe, was the blood testing, where you have to prick the finger and get the blood and put it on this monitor and learn how to read the monitor to see what the blood sugar levels are. But Zachary is very intelligent, and in the hospital he learned how to do it himself.
This is all within, you know, not even 48 hours of learning he has to go into the hospital. I'm giving shots, I'm taking blood, I'm working glucose monitors, I'm helping him figure out his carbs, getting him figured out what he's going to eat. And the nurses come in and they say to him, they look him right in the eye and they say, "Now Zachary, you know this is forever, don't you?"
It scared me a little because I thought, what if this is forever? And the other half of my brain was thinking, the change has to happen. Nothing is forever.
He said, I'm not going to do this forever. And it disturbed him to hear people tell him it was going to be forever.
I said to Zachary, "You know, I'm so glad that the hospital was here for when we needed it. But I want you to understand that when we get you home, we're going to contact the people that we know, and we're going to see what we can do to move you into a different kind of care." I said, "I don't care what it takes. I am going to get you through this system and onto the other side."
Zachary Swerdlow had diabetes. It is a dangerous and horrifying disease, but he was not going to let it rule his life. Zachary would follow his doctor's orders for now, but he and his family would continue to look elsewhere for answers.
We had many discussions with Zachary when he came home from the hospital about how he was going to get well, and I was impressed with his determination.
I decided to cure myself the hard way instead of going the easy way and giving myself shots for the rest of my life.
I had never seen that in even an adult, but for a little child to say, I am going to be well, I am not staying like this. And we talked to him about how can we do this.
And my idea was to seek out those people I knew with more knowledge than I had that could help me put the package together.
The first person Janet contacted was Robert Kress, a pharmacist with extensive knowledge of natural remedies who employs alternative nutrition and supplement therapies.
In conventional, or we'll say allopathic medicine or Western pharmacy, you're generally treating the symptoms. So if someone, for instance, like diabetes, has high blood sugar, you're going to give them something that's going to either lower the blood sugar or help stimulate or increase their insulin output, or giving them an artificial insulin. What we like to do is find out why is the blood sugar high and why is the body not able to manage it correctly. In Zachary's case, it was not uncommon from what most children go through, which is considered juvenile diabetes. And this is where oftentimes it's type 1 diabetes and they end up put on insulin. In his case, he went into an insulin crisis where his levels were quite high.
In the course of exploring the mysterious causes of Zachary's insulin predicament, Robert discovered several potential problems.
We found parasites in him, we found infection all through his body, we found a lot of stuff going on that were not being addressed, nor would they ever be addressed with insulin.
So aside from strengthening him nutritionally, we wanted to start detoxifying areas. The pancreas, the liver, because the pancreas and the liver has a relation that's often not spoken of, as well as the vaccination spots.
Robert worked with us to develop a nutritional program that was not conflictive with the insulin program that we were on.
The next element we started to look at is the kidneys, which is a very important part. I mean, Eastern medicine looks at the kidneys to kind of be the chi, the life force that presents itself. So we like to look at the kidneys and also address the lymph system. So we've got to give it a little aid and support there, not only with nutrition, but with topical mud packs and castor oil packs in those areas to bring strength onto them.
And as they got stronger, because the way we understood it from Robert, which made sense, the pancreas was overworked.
I also found out that I had some digestive issues too, and that may be the cause of high blood sugar.
So what we had to do then was support all the internal organs so that then we could get the pancreas up and running again. Robert has a doctor of osteopathy that works out of his office. And when I realized that, I thought, okay, maybe he'll take Zachary on.
Dr. Tabuzian was not only an open-minded osteopath, he specialized in endocrinology. He was uniquely qualified to handle Zachary's case.
I figured this doctor would understand Robert's method that we're doing. He understands the insulin method that I'm doing, and maybe he could oversee and be the umbrella that could bring us all together and would keep me able to have access to the Western medicine, which I still believe we need, and bring in the complementary end of it, which would continue walking Zachary on his path of wellness.
The next team member recruited by Janet was Dr. Maynard, a chiropractor who had seen Zachary in the past and was agreeable to the family's treatment plan.
Dr. Maynard, who was open to all of this information, worked on Zachary's spinal column to realign the vertebrae so that the electrical impulses could travel unhindered through the spinal column and work into the organs of that area.
When I initially began my treatment with Zachary after he had been diagnosed with diabetes, our interaction was pretty typical to what it usually was. The only difference that I was presented with that day was a history and what looked to me like a sick kid versus a healthy kid I'd seen the last time I saw him.
There is a vertebrae in my spine for every organ in my body, and the one that controlled my pancreas was really far off.
And after every treatment, his blood sugar would drop 30, 40 points. And that says a whole lot about healing. Because never, when you go to diabetic specialists, they say get a chiropractic adjustment. Never hear anything like that.
My treatment of Zachary, as is every chiropractic treatment, is to attempt to address the cause of the disease. I felt like all I did was support his nervous system to allow what they were doing to be beneficial to him.
Because I know that the pineal gland governs the endocrine system, I decided that it might be important for him to pay a visit to a man that I know that does craniosacral therapy.
Craniosacral therapy is a light touch massage technique that's designed, among other things, to increase the functionality of the fluid that protects the spinal cord and the brain. While Zachary seemed to benefit from all the carefully orchestrated treatments, his most dramatic improvement came from somewhere completely unexpected.
We won this cruise, and we went to Central America before Christmas.
We packed my medicine and our things, and we went on the cruise.
He loves to swim.
And there was a sea salt pool that they filled with water directly from the ocean every day.
The doctor had told us before we left that to take his blood sugar before he exercised and about 30 minutes afterwards to see how his body responded.
And we noticed whenever he would come out of swimming, his blood sugar would drop tremendously just from swimming in the saltwater pool without any insulin injection.
That was a real eye-opener to me. And I saw right there on his glucometer that something had actually happened. That I had physical proof that the sea salt worked.
So that's when everything started clicking in, that there's something else naturally in our environment, like salt water, that can help diabetic people and reduce the need for insulin.
And so while we were on the ship, we were able to cut his insulin down quite a bit. We were on the ship about 8-9 days. And in that time, we kept cutting him down because he needed less and less insulin.
And it enabled us to get the mindset of really getting him off of it.
So I thought, okay, if I can take this home and replicate this, I can continue to help his blood sugar regulate and get lower. It was absolutely incredible. The ship we were on was called the Miracle, and I considered that our miracle.
The Swerdlows had discovered that the simple act of swimming in the saltwater pool while on vacation had done more to treat Zachary's diabetes than prescribed therapies.
When we got back from that cruise, Zachary didn't need a lot of insulin at all. In fact, by that time, he was completely off the daytime Novolog for the food. We were doing that through diet and herbs, and we were just down to 1 or 2 units of the Lantus at night. So then we said, well, if he only needs 1 or 2, he doesn't need any. We just had to take that leap of knowing, not faith, but knowing that he would be completely well. And when we stopped doing the Lantus and he was completely and totally off of insulin injections, it was like a great burden, a great relief was lifted from us and from him.
Now that I'm off of insulin, my blood sugar was actually better than I was on insulin. I seem to have more energy, and I also seem to be able to think more clearly.
I don't necessarily think Zachary's in a honeymoon period. I think this is just a transition of ill health to health. And I think he knows what he needs to do to keep himself on track because, you know, only a few months ago he was in a very weakened state. The body does not automatically regenerate and turn itself over in a day or two. So there's still a path to go to make sure he's looking at all the elements in regards to his own health here.
We'll never know the exact cause of what triggered it, but we do know that eliminating the parasites, reversing the effects of the inoculations, giving the pancreas a rest with alternatives to allow it to come back and regenerate, all of these things helped in healing him.
In the last 4 to 6 weeks, he looks to me, acts to me like a normal kid. He's not missing school now. Actually, he just made it through flu season, and his brother got more of a flu than he did.
It's amazing the way I see Zachary today. Zachary is certainly not the child he was before all this happened. And he really is a young man now. You know, he in some ways he lost his childhood, but he is definitely on the right road to becoming a wonderful, productive member of society with a lot to offer himself and other people.
Things I like to do now is eat a meal without having to check my blood sugar 2 hours after, play outside with my little brother without having to check it every half hour, not having to worry about having a seizure right then and there.
He looks like he never had anything and nothing was ever wrong with him.
What has convinced me that this is curable is that they tell me that my pancreas is 98% dead, and a recent test has shown that my pancreas is 100% healthy.
It's been a very interesting 6 months for us. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's had its ups and downs, but in the long run, it's been worth it because we're all better people because of it.
The Swerdlow family was prepared to do whatever was necessary to keep a dangerous disease at bay. Zachary was determined to control his diabetes without a lifetime of daily insulin injections. So he sought out advice from doctors, therapists, and practitioners, and benefited from all they had to offer. It takes a strong kid to endure such a complicated ordeal, so it's somewhat poetic that Zachary's most effective therapy, the one that finally freed him from the needle, was to simply jump into a saltwater swimming pool.